Trump in 2024 means one thing: a financial storm you'll feel in your wallet, or maybe a jackpot you never saw coming. What happens next? Let's just say it's nothing you'd expect. America first, everyone else second. Trump's America First policy is like inviting everyone to a game of Monopoly, only to change the rules midway so that you're the only one who ever collects $200. It might seem like a brilliant strategy, but it's not exactly a recipe for building friendships. Imagine America First 2.0, where the US economy steps into the spotlight, leaving the rest of the world in the shadows. In this scenario, US industries could take center stage, with other nations playing supporting roles. Tariffs might take a dramatic turn, turning imported goods into luxury items that only a few can afford. The objective? To supercharge American manufacturing, safeguard jobs, and transform the US into an economic fortress. But here's the plot twist. This kind of protectionism could leave the US isolated with fewer trade partners as countries seek new alliances, creating conflicts that make the trade tensions of 2018 seem like minor skirmishes. If tariffs become the primary tool in this strategy, global supply chains could be thrown into disarray. Countries that depend on exporting goods to the US might find their economies slowing down, or even contracting, leading to slower growth and possible recessions. Meanwhile, American consumers could discover that their favorite products are suddenly out of reach, as prices for everything from electronics to clothing skyrocket. The irony? The very policy designed to protect American workers could end up costing them more at the checkout counter. Remember when NAFTA was rebranded as the USMCA? That was just the beginning. We could see more trade deals that heavily favor the US, leaving other countries wondering why they even bothered negotiating. The result? A fragmented global trade system where nations either comply with the new rules or look elsewhere, potentially leading to less international cooperation. But let's not overlook the complexity of renegotiating trade deals. It's like trying to build a puzzle with pieces that don't quite fit. Every country is trying to protect its own interests, and the result can be a tangled mess. If the US pushes too hard for its own terms, we might see global trade talks stalling, with the US left out in the cold as new alliances form. This could lead to a fractured economic landscape where regional blocs take the lead, leaving the US scrambling to maintain its influence. Imagine a renewed push to bring manufacturing back to the US, stretching supply chains like an overused rubber band. Every product might bear a Made in the USA label, but at the cost of higher prices and longer waits. The global economy could shift as the US becomes more isolated, forcing other nations to develop their own supply chains and leading to a fragmented market. But the effects don't end there. Countries that are key players in the global supply chain, like Vietnam, Mexico, and China, might struggle to adapt as companies pull out, leading to economic instability. And moving manufacturing isn't as simple as relocating a factory. It requires new infrastructure, which could increase carbon emissions just when the world is trying to reduce its footprint. In short, the America First policy might set off a chain reaction of unintended consequences that reshape the global economy in ways no one anticipated. Moreover, the isolationist approach could spark a wave of innovation in other countries as they adapt to a world without easy access to the US market. Nations that were once heavily reliant on American trade might invest in more local industries, fostering regional growth and creating new economic hubs. While this might benefit those regions in the long run, it could also lead to a more divided global economy where cooperation is replaced by competition and the spirit of global partnership becomes a relic of the past. Breaking up with China. What happens when a superpower decides to end its economic relationship with its largest trading partner? It's like a messy divorce, with each side trying to keep the best assets while the lawyers rake in the fees. The US-China relationship has been one of mutual benefit and tension for years. But what if the US decides it's time to part ways for good? Trade Wars, the sequel, could see tariffs returning with even more force. This time, designed to drive a permanent wedge between the world's two largest economies. Countries caught in the middle might have to pick sides, leading to economic slowdowns as global trade becomes mired in bureaucracy and red tape. If this trade war escalates, we might see a world where trade flows are permanently rerouted. Countries like Australia or Germany, which rely on commerce with both the US and China, could find themselves in a tight spot. They might have to make difficult choices that could harm their own economies, affecting not just goods, but also services, technology transfers, and tourism. This could lead to a prolonged period of slower global economic growth, with some regions taking years to recover. The battle over technology could become the defining conflict of this new economic era. 5G networks, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing are the frontiers of global power, and whichever country leads in these areas could set the course for the global economy for decades to come. If the US and China continue to clash, we might witness the emergence of two distinct technological ecosystems, one led by the US and the other by China. This division could create compatibility issues, raise costs for businesses operating globally, and slow down the pace of technological innovation as companies and countries alike navigate this divided landscape. Moreover, the global supply chain already stretched thin might not be able to handle another major disruption. Companies could be forced to relocate manufacturing, driving up costs and causing delays. The global economy could face a bumpy road ahead as businesses scramble to adapt to a world where the US and China are no longer on speaking terms, or at least not without a mediator. This decoupling isn't just about moving factories, it's about rethinking entire business models. Companies might find themselves grappling with higher costs, longer lead times, and increased uncertainty. For small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, which often lack the resources for larger corporations, this could be a make-or-break moment. The ripple effects could be felt across the global economy, with consumer prices rising, innovation slowing, and economic growth stalling. But the impact could go even further. As the US and China pull apart, other countries might step in to fill the void, creating new alliances and trading blocs that could exclude both superpowers. This could lead to a more multipolar world, where power is more evenly distributed, but also more volatile as new rivalries emerge. The global order as we know it could be reshaped in ways that are difficult to predict, with new centers of influence arising and old ones fading away. DIY energy. Imagine an energy policy that turns America into the world's one-stop shop for power. The US could ramp up oil and gas production to such an extent that the global prices plummet, leaving traditional energy exporters struggling to stay afloat. The dream of energy independence could become a reality, but not without consequences. Fracking and other methods of extraction could see a resurgence, with the US pumping out so much oil and gas that global energy markets are flooded. Countries like Saudi Arabia and Russia, which have long dominated the energy sector, could find themselves scrambling to adapt to this new reality. The global balance of power could shift, with the US emerging as a dominant energy supplier. But here's the catch. While lower energy prices might seem like a win for consumers, they could destabilize regions that rely heavily on oil revenue. Countries like Venezuela, already on the brink of collapse, could see their situations worsen. Even allies like Saudi Arabia might face internal pressures as their economies struggle with lower oil prices, leading to increased competition and volatility in the global energy market. At the same time, while the rest of the world is moving toward renewable energy, the US might double down on fossil fuels like coal, rolling back environmental regulations to keep energy production high. This could create a rift in international climate agreements, as the US takes a different path from other nations pushing for greener alternatives. The global effort to combat climate change could be weakened, leading to more severe consequences for the planet and the global economy. If the US becomes a global energy superstore, selling oil and gas to the highest bidders, it could shift the balance of power in energy markets. However, this could also lead to geopolitical tensions, as countries that once relied on US support now find themselves competing with American energy companies. The global energy market could become more fragmented, with increased competition and potentially even conflicts over access to energy resources. Moreover, the environmental impact of such a policy cannot be ignored. Increased fossil fuel production could lead to higher greenhouse gas emissions, contributing to global warming and exacerbating climate change. The US might find itself increasingly isolated on the world stage as other countries push for more sustainable energy solutions. This could strain international relations and lead to a breakdown in cooperation on global environmental issues, further complicating efforts to address the climate crisis. Immigration shutdown. Picture an immigration policy that not only closes America's doors, but also locks them tight. It's not just about border security, it's about reshaping the US labor market and, by extension, the global economy. Stricter immigration policies could lead to significant labor shortages in key industries like agriculture, construction, and technology. As fewer workers are available to fill these roles, wages might rise, driving up costs for businesses and consumers alike. This could lead to inflation, as the cost of goods and services increases across the board. Countries that rely on remittances from migrants working in the US could see their economies suffer as these funds dry up. For many families in developing nations, remittances are a lifeline, and without them, poverty rates could sharply rise. This could lead to increased economic instability in these countries, with potential ripple effects on global markets. A crackdown on work visas, particularly the H-1B program, could make the US less attractive to top talent. As skilled workers look for opportunities elsewhere, we could see a brain drain from the US, with countries like Canada, Australia, and Germany stepping in to attract the best and brightest. This could shift the global innovation landscape, with new hubs emerging in places that once were considered secondary to Silicon Valley. The impact on the global labor market could be profound. As industries in the US struggle to find workers, businesses might be forced to automate or outsource jobs, leading to unemployment in other countries. This could further exacerbate economic inequalities as wealthier nations adapt more easily to automation, while poorer countries struggle to keep pace. Moreover, the social impact of such a policy cannot be overlooked. As immigration becomes more restricted, cultural exchange and diversity in the US could diminish. This could lead to a more insular society, with less openness to new ideas and perspectives. The long-term consequences of such a shift could be a reduction in the US's global influence as it becomes less connected to the rest of the world. Greenback Takeover. The US dollar might not just be a currency, it could become a weapon in the battle for global dominance. Imagine a world where the dollar's strength is used not just to facilitate trade, but to assert power on the global stage. Keeping the US dollar strong could be a key strategy, even if it means making American exports more expensive and imports cheaper. This could lead to trade imbalances as countries with weaker currencies struggle to keep up. Nations that rely on dollar-denominated debt could find themselves in a bind, as rising interest rates and a strong dollar make it harder to pay off their loans. As the dollar strengthens, countries with larger amounts of dollar-denominated debt could face a crisis, particularly in developing nations. These countries might struggle to repay their loans, leading to economic instability and financial turmoil. The global financial system could come under strain as investors grow wary of lending to countries with high levels of debt. And as trade imbalances grow, we could see increased protectionism and trade barriers, leading to slower global growth and potentially even a new era of economic isolationism. Economic sanctions could continue to be wielded like a hammer, isolating countries like Iran, North Korea, and Venezuela from the global economy. The result? More tension in global markets, as countries scramble to find alternatives to the dollar and hedge against the risk of being targeted next. But sanctions aren't without their risks. As more countries find themselves cut off from the global financial system, we could see the rise of alternative currencies and payment systems. China's digital yuan, for example, could gain traction as countries look for ways to bypass the dollar. This could lead to a fragmentation of the global financial system, with different regions using different currencies and payment systems. The result? Increased complexity and uncertainty in global trade, as businesses and investors navigate a more fractured and unpredictable landscape. Pushing the dollar too hard could provoke a backlash from other global powers. Countries like China and Russia might accelerate their efforts to find alternatives to the dollar for international trade, potentially leading to a fragmented global financial system. The US might win the battle for dollar supremacy, but at the cost of creating new global financial alliances that bypass the greenback altogether. But here's where it gets tricky. If the US pushes too hard, we could see the emergence of a new global financial order. Countries might start forming regional alliances with new currencies and payment systems designed to bypass the dollar. This could lead to increased competition and tension as the US fights to maintain its dominance. The global financial system could become more fragmented, with increased instability and uncertainty making it harder for businesses and governments to plan for the future. Moreover, the consequences of a greenback takeover strategy could extend beyond economics. As the US dollar is used more aggressively as a tool of power, global perceptions of the US could shift. Allies might start to view the US as more of a bully than a partner, leading to a decline in soft power and influence. This could result in a world where the US is more isolated, with fewer allies willing to stand by its side in times of crisis. Fed up with the Fed. Imagine a tug-of-war between the Oval Office and the Federal Reserve, with monetary policy as the ultimate prize. If political pressure leads to slashing interest rates, it might boost the stock market temporarily, but it could also spark inflation and weaken the dollar, causing instability in global financial markets. If the Fed's independence is compromised, we could see a loss of confidence in the US financial system, leading to capital outflows and fluctuations in global markets. This could weaken the dollar's status as a safe haven and increase demand for alternative currencies like the euro or yen. As US monetary policy becomes more unpredictable, global markets could experience more frequent and severe fluctuations, leading to a fragmented global economy where countries struggle to adapt to new realities. Businesses and investors might find themselves navigating an increasingly uncertain landscape. But let's not overlook the potential long-term consequences. If the Fed's decisions are increasingly driven by political motives rather than economic fundamentals, the global economy could enter a new era of instability. Countries that peg the currencies to the dollar or rely on the US financial system could find themselves in uncharted territory, forced to adjust their own policies in response to an increasingly erratic US monetary stance. Moreover, the ripple effects of such a shift could be felt far and wide. As confidence in the US financial system wanes, global investors might start looking for safer havens, leading to a shift in capital flows and increased volatility in global markets. This could exacerbate economic inequalities, as wealthier nations are better able to weather the storm, while developing countries struggle to keep pace. In the end, a Fed that's no longer seen as independent could undermine the very foundations of the global financial system. Trust in the dollar, and by extension, the US economy, could erode, leading to a world where economic stability is increasingly elusive and financial crises become more frequent.